Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Amplify with Adam. Today I have Zach here from Aldrich Manufacturing. Zach, man, thanks for joining. I'm so excited to speak with you.
Me too. Yeah, it's a pleasure to
Awesome,
be here.
awesome, man. Well, I gave you a little introduction. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Kind of where's Aldrich Manufacturing located? Where are you from?
Aldrich Manufacturing is located in Santa Clara, California. I'm a native to California. I was born in San Leandro, not too far from Santa Clara. I did live in Oregon for a while, but came back in my high school years, and that's kind of where I got into manufacturing.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about that. So, kind of how did you get your start in manufacturing and take me back to the origin story here.
Okay, so in high school, they have a vocational program that they offer to people in like their sophomore year. And there was a class called aeronautical manufacturing. And I was kind of thinking I was going to be an aircraft mechanic or a pilot. And when I showed up to the class, it was a machine shop class. I said, well, I'll give it a shot, see if I like it or not. And started grinding my own high-speed steel lathe tool and made a sheet metal gauge for my drills. And immediately I loved it. So
Yeah.
for the next 2 years, I would do 3 hours a day of little projects and submitting those for inspection, and started learning how to write code for CNC machines. And I didn't go into machining right after that program. I think it was like maybe a year or two, and I got my first job at a tool and die shop. And I started doing some manual work and some CNC lathe work.
So this has really been a lifelong passion for you if you
Yeah.
started in high school. So did
Yeah,
they
I think
let
I was
you?
like 16 years old back then.
Yeah. So after that first class, it sounded like you said about 3 hours a day. Like they let you like take up a big portion of your school day,
Yeah.
dedicating it to that craft. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was like every afternoon after lunch. It was like from I think 12 to 3, something like that.
And
12:30
do
to
you feel
3:30.
like do you feel like a lot of like what you learned then, is that still kind of the basis for your learning, or has a lot changed since, kind of the 16-year-old to now, what you're doing?
Yeah, the high school years were mostly manual, and I still use manual mill to this day
Yeah.
for like just a real quick one-off setup for like a side hole or an angled feature. So just those high school years were like just getting me familiar with how it feels when the tool cuts certain material, and how versatile the manual mill is, how quick the manual lathe can be. But what I do today when I'm not doing manual is very different, as far as it's mostly programming out of CAM software, and setting up the tools, running a CMM. It's a lot different now. It's more
Yeah.
automated.
But that feel that you're talking about, the feel of the tool on the material, I've heard that that manual experience can help when you're going to, more the today's technology, because it can give you a sense of the material itself and the tools you're using and things of that nature.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely does help, because that right off the bat, I don't think I can get away with this. I'm gonna have to do something different.
Right. So take me through. So you get your first job at a tool and die company. Where does that lead to Aldrich Manufacturing started?
Well, that tool and die shop actually sent me to an apprenticeship, and I didn't actually complete the 4 years because the program kind of ended. It was like something had to do with funding or something. But I kept in manual for a few more years, and I got into a shop in Pleasanton, California, that started teaching me how to do programming on a manual mill that had like XYZ movement, where you
Mm-hmm.
could write little programs. And from that shop, I went to another shop that started teaching me how to use Mastercam, where you would actually sit at a computer, write a full program for a CNC mill, and start making parts. And I was kind of fortunate, because a lot of shops won't let you just come in and learn the program. They want
Yeah.
someone who already knows the program. So I did a couple years there. Um, and so through those years, I kind of spent a lot of time as a programmer, became a shop manager, and eventually I started doing after hours contracting, where I would just get paid, hourly, and then finally getting paid per part. And one of those shops that I worked as a contractor for offered me one day to buy a machine. I bought my first machine. I made payments on it for like 6 or 7 months. And I thought that was it. I was just going to have one machine and I was going to go try to start a shop. But a year later, they offered to let me buy all the machines, all the equipment. I guess their lease was expiring and they didn't want to deal with the shop anymore.
Yeah.
So I had about 30 days to get out, and I found the place I'm at now, moved all my stuff over there, took out a small business loan, to cover the moving expenses. And now that's where I'm at now. I've acquired a couple more machines since then. And at first I had to get used to how much money you actually had to have coming in. I remember the first month I had like $10,000 worth of work, and I was like, okay, that should be fine. And it was like about, 4 times more is what I really needed to, to pay for everything. But now we're at a pretty good spot now where we kind of know what we need, and Xometry is nice because they just kind of send you an email and you get to pick and choose what you're going to do, and you can be as busy as you want, or if you need to take a vacation, you can have a real light schedule.
Yeah, absolutely. So it sounds like from like the title of the class, it was aerospace industry, kind of what they were teaching you to make. Do you find that those are a lot of the parts that you're making nowadays? Like what's some of the industries that you come up and kind of rub up against when you're looking at partners or at customers?
Yeah, it's mostly a lot of aerospace nowadays. I've seen even customers that used to be in a different area of business, like semiconductor, they've switched over to aerospace. I don't know if that's because of the last year, the way things were.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's mostly aerospace. And the company I did buy these machines from, their main customer was Lockheed Martin. So I got familiar with a lot of the types of materials and a lot of the types of drawings that the parts needed to be made with.
Absolutely. And what were some of the machines you're talking through? Like you said you were like, I'm gonna have like that one machine, and what was that one versus kind of what are some of your capabilities now? Because I was looking through your website, and it looks like you guys have a fantastic list of services, and I'll plug a few of them here: of metal finishing, plating, heat treating, part making, hardware installation, welding, testing, final assembly. Like it's a full litany of services here. So what are some of those machines you're working with now?
Well, I've since acquired a horizontal, which gives me rotation. It gives me like a 4th axis. And if I really have to, I can get a 5th rotation by putting an indexer on there. So I've got basically 5 axis in that regard. I would like to get an actual integrated 5-axis machine eventually. Another thing I just acquired at the end of last year is a CNC lathe that has live tooling, and it's also got a sub spindle. So certain lathe parts I can make complete in one shot, in one setup on that lathe. And I'm really fortunate that the one of my setup guys, he's a certified aerospace welder. So anytime we see a job that needs welding, he's got his own welder at his shop, in his garage basically. And we're trying to get it to where he has his own welding station in my building.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you talked a little bit about, you felt like $10,000 was a good month for you to start. What are some of the early like lessons that you were learning too, besides that, was there anything from like the customer side of things, like how you're quoting stuff, or, how you're engaging with your customers, or the types of jobs you want to take? What were some of those other lessons that you learned kind of at the start of Aldrich Manufacturing?
I would say trying to build a really reliable supply chain, that where you could get exactly what you needed, because a lot of the stuff now that I do requires material test reports, traceability and stuff like that. And that's, not always easy to get with certain vendors. So finding someone where you can just email and say, yeah, I can have this by, tomorrow or 2 days, and you can have all the paperwork you need, so that you don't spend a bunch of time, you don't spend half a day trying to get, the actual materials. That was the that was a little bit of a learning curve, and now I've got a pretty reliable supply chain.
Yeah.
And now that Xometry has that advanced card too, that makes it a lot easier as far as cost, where I can just take, the 30% they advance me to buy whatever material and hardware I need, any finishing that I need. I don't really have to worry about that. Whereas before, you kind of had to gauge, how much money that was in the bank, and can I afford to, put the money up for this job yet? That's really not that hard of a thing to do now with that card.
Yeah.
But before, it was something that you had to kind of watch, make sure you had X amount of dollars coming in at certain times so that you could afford the next job, basically.
Yeah, you're almost playing like Jenga with your job.
Yeah.
And to be clear, that was not a paid plug. That was straight from the horse's mouth there. But no, I appreciate you underlining that, because I do think that that's an interesting thing that you learn, is that, yeah, I've got this job, but oh man, I'm not going to be paid on it for 30 days. So when I take this job and I got two, I've got to outlay that cash for the materials and, making sure. So if you're finding, like certs and things like that on materials, it sounds like you're taking maybe some like ITAR work and things of that nature.
Yeah.
What was that certification process like for you?
Well, it was made really easy because Xometry offered to pay for it the first time around. And then also ITAR itself has changed the way you do it now. Before, you had to wire the money in advance, and then you had to submit all the documents. I think they've changed it around now where it's all a little bit simpler, where you just go online, do the filing, and then they just take the money later. But with Xometry helped me along with the cost, and also giving me some pointers on how to fill out the paperwork and all that. It was made a lot easier. And I think they also lowered the price because of COVID. It was $2,250, but this year it was only $500. So that's another help.
Yeah, absolutely. So you were talking a little bit about, if you want to get a true 5-axis machine. As you look towards the future a little bit, what are some other things that you're considering? It sounds like, you got welding coming in, potentially 5-axis. What does the near future look like for Aldrich Manufacturing?
A friend of mine who has a shop near my shop, he really thinks I should get a wired EM because it enables you to do jobs that most people can't do, just because maybe there'll be like a really complex machining to it, and then maybe like a flat bottom, and it's like, you're like, well, how do I hold on to this thing? Well, he's showing me how you can just machine everything on the 5-axis, then take it over the wire EM and just kind of cut it accurately on the back, and you got a perfectly flat surface, burr free. And they're expensive, but I think he's also shown me that it doesn't even have to be a complex part. There's just certain ways to do even like standard parts where you're freeing yourself up while that machine's working, and now you can have a mill doing some other things. So now you're doubling the money, tripling your money.
Yeah, and a lot of it, it's like that, like you said. Some of the consideration is not only like the ROI on the types of jobs you can take with that type of stuff, but does it free you up for other things, right? Because you've got a lot of hats that you got to wear as a small business owner. So you got a lot of things that you got to be doing. So if it frees you up for that time, that's a valuable investment. It's awesome. So one of the things I always ask my guests when they come on is, if you were talking to someone that was considering getting into the space, right? Or maybe your younger self at 16, right? When you're getting interested, right? What are a few things that you've learned along the way that you would be like, hey, I want to pass this nugget along to you? So what's like 1 or 2 lessons that you've learned throughout this journey that you'd like to pass on?
Well, just, be patient with yourself and with everyone that you're working with, and take the time to, get the right training and experience with, the types of parts you plan on doing. I really value the time that I had as a contractor, where you could prove, you were getting paid per part, but you didn't necessarily have your own shop yet. So, being able to prove to yourself that you can do everything from beginning to end, so that you can answer the questions, you could be that go-to guy, and approximately how much it's going to cost and how long it's going to take. I would say that would be the best advice, so that you know what you're getting into, and you can be reliable and deliver on time and deliver the correct product.
Yeah, know what you're getting into, but also believe in yourself through
Right.
like proof of concept, right? Like you did this thing, so now you know you can do it for yourself.
Right.
I really like that. That's awesome, man. Well, yeah, I so enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much for coming on, and you know what, I'd love to keep in touch and maybe have you back on for another episode in the future, man. This was awesome.
Oh, sounds great.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, tune in next week for another episode of Amplify with Adam, and find all of Zach's information. I will plug those in the comments below. You know, I know we've got your website, LinkedIn, personal LinkedIn here, so we'll definitely make sure to plug you there. So tune in next week.